When running a record label, there's two kinds of budgets that you'll interact with. The number one would be just a record label budget, and that would be expenses like your website hosting and buying a computer and maybe even paying for staff or paying for record label sweatshirts or something like that. And I recently did a video that you can check out where I have a template for those kind of expenses. But today I want to talk about an album release budget, an album budget. And that's the second type of finances that you'll have to deal with when running a record label. Managing all the costs that come in for an album and then balancing that with all of the revenue from the various sources like streaming and vinyl sales and licensing. So today I'm going to walk you through my album budget template. I have a free copy that you can download. Go to otherrecordlabels.com/budget where you can get this budget. You can also get the general record label budget as well. But today we're going to walk through the album release budget, some of the things and some of the categories that you might experience and need to spend money on when you're preparing to release one of your artist's records. For example, you're going to incur graphic design needs like designing the album cover and social media posts. You're going to have manufacturing costs if you're doing CD or vinyl or cassette. You're going to have music production, perhaps, maybe if you're involved in that, and that could be session musicians, mixing, mastering, etc. There's marketing that includes ads and PR and pitching, that kind of stuff, maybe photography and video, radio if you're going to do that, press kits, all that kind of stuff. And we even talk about some of the extras like publishing or gas money that you might incur while promoting a record. All of those things need to be accounted for so that when revenue comes in, sales, streaming money or vinyl sales or ticket sales or whatever it is that you're entitled to with the artist, which will help you determine how much you owe the artist in royalties and how much you get to keep to recoup some of the cost you've already invested. Let's dive into this template that you can download for free, and we'll go through it and we'll talk about some of the things you might see. So I've actually gone ahead and contacted some of our friendly suppliers and manufacturers and different people in the industry who I've worked with and we've had on the podcast. And I've asked them for some real numbers and some real pricing here that I could plug into this. And I've included links to them too. So if you want to check them out, you can also check them out. Most of them are in our directory, which is a list of like trusted vendors that I've worked with and some of the people in our community have worked with. So you can find those at otherrecordlabels.com/directory. But I've got my Excel template up here. And again, you can totally mess with this. As we goof with the numbers here, you'll see that this grand total here changes. And also what I wanted to make sure that I was doing was I was just throwing everything into this. So if you're freaking out and you're like, oh my goodness, an album's going to cost me $15,000 to release, that's not necessarily the case. For a lot of you, like 80% of what I mentioned in here, you could do on your own, you could have a friend do, or you could just omit altogether. So I just want to kind of throw everything in here, and then you can totally tweak this template that is more applicable to your label, because you might be a digital only label. And right there, we remove like $4,800 and more. And you might say, I'm not going to mess with radio. So we remove another $1,000. There's a lot of things that may not be relevant to you. And then there may be some things that you actually want to put in here. And this is totally, if you know Excel at all, you can totally mess with this and change it up. I also have some links too. So when you click on some of these, it takes you to some of our suppliers, which I mentioned. Okay. And the first topic is graphic design. This is something you kind of incur when you are making a record, yes, but also when you're running a record label, right? Designing your website, designing your logo, that kind of stuff. Usually this is a fixed cost. It's not a variable cost like manufacturing is. Like manufacturing, it comes down to like, if you're making records, it's like vinyl records, it might be $10 or $12 a record. If you run out of your first 500 records and you need to press another 500, it's another $12 a record. Whereas in the case of like the album cover, let's say you pay an artist $500 for the rights to use a photograph or a visual artist who draws something for you. That $500 is a one-time expense. And so if you press 100 records or you press 100,000 records, generally the cost of the illustrator or the artist or the photograph is just for that one-time fee. Now, that could change. It all depends on the artist. But I think for an album cover, you could be looking at $500. Now, sometimes artists do their own album cover, and that's totally fine. And I'll explain, you still need packaging layout, and you really need a professional for that. But let's say the artist is like, hey, listen, I drew this little doodle on a piece of paper. I want to take a picture of it, and that's our album cover. So you could remove that completely. But I think a safe bet, and $500 is, I don't know, I think that's an average price, because let's say you asked a a friend to use a photo and they're like, sure, give me $100. Or you asked a graphic designer, maybe there's a graphic designer who charges $50 an hour and they designed you something in 4 hours. That's $200. So it's less than this. At the same time, if you hired a reputable artist who specializes in album covers, then it'll cost you upwards of $1,000, maybe $2,000, maybe $3,000. So it can really get up there if you want something really special. Now, me personally, I'm a graphic designer by trade, but I still value album cover artwork highly. I've received a lot of compliments over the years, and it's something I invest a lot of time in. In fact, I'm usually working on it for the entire year we're recording and mixing. I'm thinking about the artwork, and it's usually up to the last minute when I'm still making tweaks. So I think investing $500 is no big deal. I have a album cover I'm interested in right now that I might need to license a painting from a friend, but they're still a well-known artist. And I don't know what it's going to cost me because I've actually already paid for that painting, but I know that I don't have the rights to use it. It's hanging on my living room wall, but I don't have the rights necessarily to put it onto vinyl or to upload it to Spotify. So I'm hoping it gives me a really good deal. I'm kind of expecting it's going to be about 500, but it could be less. I don't know, hopefully. Here's the thing. If an artist says, I'm going to do this on my own, I know how to use Photoshop or Canva. That's a silly idea, but let's say, then you could take that away, that 500 away. But you're still going to need packaging layout. So what that means is, and I wish I had a vinyl record here, but let's say, oh, here's a CD. So this is my friend M. Griggs' vinyl or CD cover. You can't see it down low, but so this is really cool. It's a digipack, right? And then there's a CD. This is on the label 12K. Cool CD, all right? So you pay an artist to, let's say you pay for the painting, or you pay for a graphic designer and an artist, and they do the typography and the nice white border and the painting here, okay? So you paid for that. Let's say that artist charges you $500 to use that painting. Now, you don't own the rights to that painting, generally, unless you do, in which case it would probably cost more than $500. But you own, okay, so you get the rights to use the artwork. But look how this is laid out. There's typography here on the front. There's a white border. There's a barcode on the back. There's a record label logo. Then on the inside, we have a color that seems to be, it's a plain color. It seems to be pulled from the top of the artwork here. So it matches nicely. And this is all laid out. And see that border is equal around. Then you've got the credits on the inside. Then you have, do we have a booklet in here? Yeah, we even have a booklet that gets really intense. And then, of course, the CD requires layout as well. The reason I'm telling you all this is because it's one thing to pay for the album cover, but then you're going to also need to pay. We're not going to take this much time on all these topics, by the way. But you're also going to need to pay for the layout, even the spine. That's tricky too, right? The spine. So if you're doing vinyl, if you're doing cassettes, vinyl, and CD, then that's a big expense. Now, let's say you're only doing digital. And so the album cover is $500, but you're not doing any physical products. You take that away. Let's say the artist designs the cover themselves, just takes a cool picture of their spaghetti noodles, or uses Alphagetti to spell their band name. Boom. And now all of those expenses are gone. See how this is kind of like, this is totally up to you. There are no rules. I mean, you just want to make sure everybody gets paid fairly, right? And then posters and merch too, because a graphic designer might say, okay, listen, maybe you're using the same person. They might say, listen, I'm totally cool with, I'm going to do $500 and I'm going to design you an album cover. But then it's like, well, hold on a second now. That took me all day to do. Now you're saying you want me to take the template from your pressing plant and then take that album cover and then also create a spine version of that and a back cover and an inside cover and a label. That costs extra money. And now what about if you want a t-shirt of the artwork as well? Or you want a poster to advertise your upcoming tour. I did a job for an artist who was releasing on CD. I designed the cover. I think I laid out the CD as well, or maybe they were digital only. But what they also wanted was a t-shirt design with the same look, and they wanted a poster design, which they could then fill in the event details. So it was like one poster that they could use for their whole tour, and they could just change the details. So that's something to keep in mind. That could cost you a little bit more. Or not at all. And then you might also throw in stuff like social media too. So maybe you have them make some banners for your homepage that matches the album cover. Let's move on. Manufacturing. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've actually just went to Breed Media, who we work with a lot. and they're in the UK. Key Production Group is the parent company, and I got some prices. The cassette manufacturing, I think I got from duplication.ca, who are in Canada. I've used them as well. So cassette manufacturing, I basically did 100 color tapes, duplicated, so the audio has been recorded on it, different audio on each side, a nice jewel case, a one-panel J card. So just super basic, but cool, right? 100 copies comes out to about $4.18 US per copy. That's good price. That's a really good price because people are selling them for $8, maybe $10 at shows. So that's really good. You'll break even and make a profit. So 418 for 100 cassettes. The price goes up, but you could drop it down to 50 copies if you wanted to save money. That might bring you only down to 300. It won't cut the cost in half. Vinyl manufacturing, I got this price from Breed, 250 copies, just black vinyl, colored jackets, shipping is included. Now these prices are vague, by the way, and depends on when you're seeing this. This is like 2022, 2023 prices. Things could have, the economy could collapse and making a record cost $3, or vice versa. Inflation's crazy and these numbers are insanely off. That's not really the point. I'm trying to help you a little bit, but you might have to contact them and update the prices because you might want to do color vinyl. You might want to do 500 copies. You might want to do something special like die cut or like a cool embossed thing. Let's say $2,800. CD manufacturing, just a CD with a jewel case, a 4-page booklet like the one I showed you, cellophane, which is kind of still a thing, and shipping is included as well. $1,590. Oh, how many is that? I think that's 100. Sorry, I didn't say. I think that's 100 copies. So if we were to go all out and we were to get 250 vinyl, 100 tapes, and 100 CDs, we'd be looking at 4,800. I think that might be before tax. Doesn't matter, but let's say 5,000 to round it up. Now, that's not a huge deal, right? So you have 450. Let me do the quick math. Let's say you sell your vinyl for $25. You sell your tapes for 10 live. You sell your CDs for 10, maybe even more. So the average price would be, let's say, $15. And so you have 450 units at the average price of $15. So now you're going to be making about $67.50, maybe more if you raise the prices, maybe less if you give some away. So you could be making $1,000 to $2,000 profit if you sell out on all of this manufacturing. Now, again, you might be saying vinyl's not for us, cassettes aren't for us, or maybe you're a cassette only and you're just $400. So you see how this works. Music production, I'm just going to fly through this because maybe some of you guys don't mess with music production. The band brings us a fully completed album, or we go on Bandcamp and we find artists who have already recorded their stuff. We don't want to get involved with that. Or maybe you're just going to help out with mastering. So I'm basically looking at here, session musicians are, honestly, that could be anything. You could have millions of session musicians. They could be top drawer and they could cost you a ton of money. So this number is totally arbitrary. Studio rentals, you might be needing a studio for weeks on weeks. This number is pretty accurate here, $100 per song, but that's on a 10-song record. So let's move on from that. Okay, marketing, there's so many different things you can do in marketing, and this is for you to fill in because you might be like, listen, digital ads is everything for us. We're going to do Facebook ads. We're going to do Instagram ads. I know how to do that really well. Or maybe you work with a company. In this case, one of our companies is Auteur Research, who are friends of the show. We've had them on to talk about digital advertising. They charge a setup fee. That's one time, $500. Then they ask you to invest $250 into ad spend. And then they help craft a campaign for you to promote your new release or whatever it is you're promoting. They do ads on Facebook. YouTube is really hot right now for ads. Maybe they're dabbling in TikTok. I'm not sure. Maybe at least $750 to get someone to help you with digital ads. Then after that, you don't have to pay the setup fee. If you do another month, it's just another $250 or however much you invest in advertising. SubmitHub is a company, we've talked about them before. You can find out about them at otherrecordlabels.com/SubmitHub. They're this portal basically where you pay a small fee to submit your music to lots of blogs or even social media influencers and playlist curators, all sorts of things. It's really well organized. I've used it a lot. I've had success on it. I've also had a lot of the opposite of success. And so I'm just saying, like, listen, dump $40 in it and strategically pitch to super hyper relevant blogs. More importantly, I believe is curators like playlists. If a playlist has a few thousand listeners and the genre they're promoting is hyper relevant to this release that you're releasing, pitch to them. It shouldn't cost you more than 20 or 30 bucks. You could get a no, but if you get on a couple playlists, it could really help in generating some streams and some longtime followers, and maybe even in the Spotify algorithm. So PR is like, listen, with Auteur Research, who is the publicist I've used many times, they're friends of mine. They're based in Canada. They do good work. They charge about $650 for a single, or if you're doing an album, they just focus on one track from that album and they pitch that as well as with the album to their list of contacts. They're getting really good at it, but it's still hit or miss, right? Like no publicist should ever or could ever promise to get you on to Stereo Gum or a great magazine, Rolling Stone or Pitchfork, or even just like regular blogs, or to get you on playlists. I mean, nobody has that power. So right now, I think you can expect to pay about $650. I would say it's between $500 to $1,000. Anything less than $500, I don't know how good of a job they'd be doing, but I could be wrong. But you could also pay upwards of $5,000 for like someone who is your like full-time publicist or more. Influencer pitching. So let's say you use Submit Hub, or let's say you pitch to influencers through their own portal. So what I mean by that is, let's say there's an influencer. I've talked about this before. I found this influencer who is this like young woman who travels the world, and she has like 500,000 followers, maybe less, maybe 250,000 on Instagram. She does like camping stuff and adventure stuff. And I thought this like indie folk record I had releasing would be relevant to her and the overall aesthetic of what she kind of curated with her personal brand. And so I reached out to her in the DMs. Now I didn't hear back from her. And I realized that you could go to her website, click through her Instagram, go to her website, and then you could do like a partnership email through that. And so I don't think I really could pay her the money that she was earning from other brands. Like she promotes like, North Face and like granola bars and stuff like that. But maybe if you could find an influencer who maybe has like 10,000 followers or 20,000 followers, and you could reach out in their DMs or through their website and say, listen, we think we have this track. Maybe you could do a TikTok with it, or maybe you could just do a cool video with it or talk about it. And maybe like for someone with 10,000 followers or less, if it's good exposure, $50 might be worth it, right? $50 for one measly story or a post or a reel. Like that's not bad. Maybe $100. So that's something to consider. It's like, there's not a lot of precedent with it, but it could be cool. Also, photography and video. This is totally up to you. Press shots can be free. You can take them on your phone. Your friend might be a photographer. The band's friend might be a photographer. I've seen this all the time. I've had them done for free before. I've also had them, I paid for them. Sometimes I pay a couple $100. It depends on the photographer. I think great photos, you're looking at least $500 nowadays. That's totally normal. Press shoots are good, especially if they give you a lot, right? If they give you high res photos of like 30 or 40 or more photos edited, that's amazing. That's worth $500 because not only could that be used in the record sleeve, but it could use as your profile, the artist profile picture on Spotify. It could be Instagram content for days. I love investing in photography. It's always worthwhile. They have to be good at editing if you're ugly like me. Okay, so videographer, performance video. I love performance videos. Like have a videographer come on into your studio, your home, or out in the backyard and have the artist play the song. That's a good investment. I've left music video blank because a music video should really cost like 10 grand, but maybe you get a grant if you live in a country that has music video grants, and you could maybe only pay 1,000 of your own money. Or maybe you have a friend who's like a budding videographer and they do it for free. There's so many stories, so I've just left it blank. Radio might be something you mess with or not. We have a company called Tiger Bomb Radio who does college radio and pitches to college radio. Now, I didn't get a chance to reach out to them actually for this video. But I think you can kind of expect maybe a month-long campaign to cost at least $1,000. I mean, that's and what they're going to do is they're going to send a pitch to all their college radio stations contacts with your new single. And I think maybe if you're a priority artist, if you pay a little bit more, you might get like a more direct pitch, or you could pay a little less and you could be included in like a list of here's 5 songs you should check out this week that they send out to all of their program directors and all of the college radio stations in the US and maybe even worldwide. So you may not be interested in that. Mailings too. I put $25. There might be a couple radio stations that want a 7-inch or a vinyl record. Most will say don't send us stuff. They all deal with digital, but you might want to fill in that field if that's applicable to you. So if you're putting together a press kit, there's kind of 2. We've already talked about photos. We already talked about album covers. But one thing you might consider is hiring someone to write a bio for you. Now, there's a great bio writer that we've had on my podcast named Sammy Main. She's also in our directory. I think there's something beautiful about having someone listen to your album, listen to the artist's album, interview the artist, which is one of Sammy's techniques, and listen to the artist, interview the artist, chat with the artist, get to know their story, and then put together a really well-crafted bio. I think like the photos, that can go a long way because you can copy and paste that into your press kit, which is what we're talking about now, or into your press emails that you're sending to blogs and to influencers and that kind of thing. But you can also use it on your about page, on your website, on the artist website. If you have a bio section on your record label's website, for each artist, you can use it there, or just paragraphs of it or small parts of it. You can use it to give to press that they can copy and paste pieces of it in their articles. And you can use it on your Spotify About Us section, like under the About Artist section. So there's lots of ways that a good bio can be reused. I put $350. I'm not quite sure. I think it might be upwards of $500, actually. I don't remember where I got that number from. Email campaign, I think, is hugely important. And if you use something like MailChimp, it's free. And you can say, I'm going to give away my old EP, the artist's old EP, or we're going to give away a compilation album, or we're going to give away something in exchange for people's email. So you can set up a landing page using MailChimp. I've talked about this before, so I won't get into it now on otherrecordlabels.com/email marketing. I've talked about email marketing before. But an artist should always be building up their mailing list. And you can use MailChimp for free up to, I think, 2,000 subscribers. So I put $50 in here. It's like $50 a month after you exceed 2,000 subscribers. But in the short term, you can use it for free. And I think it's really essential. If you are a record label, you should have an email mailing list where you give away, like I mentioned, an EP or a compilation or the first 3 songs of this upcoming release to any fans who give you their email address. So they enter their email address, automatically added to your MailChimp mailing list, and you can do a mailing list just for this artist that we're talking about now, or you could do a bigger mailing list for all of the artists for your entire label. So they enter their email, that's automatically added to your MailChimp mailing list, and then they're automatically sent to a Dropbox link or a Google Drive link to download whatever treat or reward you give them. Or maybe they're entered into a contest to win a vinyl or a t-shirt bundle or something like that. But I mean, really, it can be free in the early days. Travel and gas. I mean, listen, if you're a record label, you should really be keeping track of every time. Like, let's say you plan the album with the artist and you took them out for dinner. That is technically a recoupable expense. Now, you might say, I'm not going to get that granular. That's okay. Totally up to you. Now, as a record label, you might say, we traveled a lot. I drove the band to the studio back and forth. I'm going to expense $50 in gas against this album. As long as keep your receipts and you're not like hiding expenses in their budget that they need to pay off before that they get paid their royalties. We don't want that. That's what the labels did in the olden days. We don't want to see that. There could be things like merch items too. The label might say, okay, listen, we're going to do stickers. I've done like marketing stickers for that go on the exterior of the vinyl, but also you could reuse them on shipping boxes and I could throw them in as freebies. So that's kind of an expense against this album. And then publishing them in, I've just put this in there. We use 3-Tone Publishing. And so you might say to an artist, okay, we're going to help you set up your publishing. And there's like a one-time fee for that. But this extras form, you can delete these or you can add in things that are more normal for your label. I don't know what that is. So I don't know what that is. Okay. So this is the grand total. This is a template for you. So download this at otherrecordlabels.com/budget. And you can also download the record label general budget as well, which is completely different for this. But this is to be used on an album campaign. So every time you have a new release coming out, you duplicate this. Delete any of the information that's not relevant, and you put in the new information for the new release that's relevant. And maybe you don't use this as your like total recoupable thing. Maybe you do that through a platform like Infinite Catalog. But this could just be like a way, meet with the artist over coffee and say, here's our budget for the album. You could do this too, right? I'm only going to allow $250 for graphic design. I'm only going to allow $1,000 for manufacturing. We're only going to allow, or music production doesn't matter because the artist already did that. We're only going to allow $1,000 for marketing. You go down this list and you say, reverse engineer this. Our budget for this whole album is $1,000. That doesn't sound like a lot to some people, but to a lot of people, and myself included, that's a lot of money. And so if you say our budget's $1,000, how are we going to spread it over these things? So I totally forgot to add distribution in here. Bad boy. I just put it in real quick. There's not, for my label, there's no distribution expenses. I'll explain why. When I did the record label budget, I would be paying a company like Three Tone Distribution, who is our digital distributor of choice. So I would be paying them out of my record label budget, let's say $150 or $200 a year for their like premium label account. And that gives me unlimited releases through them. So I might not technically have any expenses when it comes to distribution because I get my ISRCs through them. I get my barcodes through them. So I personally wouldn't have like an additional distribution cost per new release. So that's just something to keep in mind, but you might, if you use a company like CD Baby charges per release and they charge per barcode. So they're like $50, I think, per album, approximately. It's always changing. So that's might be a line item. So I put distribution in here. Sorry, I forgot it. I've added it now. It'll be in the template you can download. Go to otherrecordlabels.com/budget.